Hello! Today we will be discussing how supervision is about relationships with Dr. Bob Milligan. Bob, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Karen. It's a pleasure to visit with you today on this very important topic. As you can see on the screen, I spent 28 years at the Dyson School at Cornell University, and for the last 10 years I've been teaching, consulting, coaching on topics of leadership, supervision, strategy, and quality. And one of the keys to that is supervision. And I really do believe that supervision is about relationships. I'd like to start this discussion by telling you a story. I was speaking to a landscape organization, and a gentleman came up afterwards and introduced himself as George. And he told me a story. He said, I worked for a landscaper for 23 years. So when I look back on those 23 years today, I was a terrible employee. I took all my vacation, I took all my sick leave, whether I was sick or not. I did the minimum. He said, but in my defense, that's what everybody did. He said, after that 23 years, the landscaper went out of business. I was fortunate to land a job with another landscaper. He said, what a difference. I never realized that work could be meaningful. He said, I enjoy what I'm doing. He tells me what's expected of me. He provides me feedback. This is the second time he sent me to this conference. Now think about that difference. To me, that really illustrates the contrast between our traditional control approach to managing employees and our research-based modern approach, which is based much more on developing trusts. The second supervisor, for George, capitalized on the three unique attributes that people have that nothing else has. They can think, they can speak, and they can feel. Thus, they can be passionate about the job. The job can have meaning. I really believe this is a distinguishing characteristic of modern supervision, the realization that employees perform best when they control their actions. Now, how do we make that happen? Well, if we're going to make that happen, we have to have productive relationships. And one way to think about that is to recognize that when we have an interaction with someone, it really has two purposes. One is the short-term one of accomplishing whatever the purpose was, but the second is to improve the relationship, that we've increased trust.
Bob, how can someone improve trust in a relationship?
Karen, that's a fantastic question. Obviously, it's a very complex question, but the key to it is fairness. When we're working with employees, when we're making decisions, when we're talking to them, we have to be fair. It's not just about being nice. Just being nice is actually a common approach. We're trying to make them happy, but it's not effective because it's not always fair. What we'd like to do quickly is look at three skills that you can develop and refine and become better at to be a better supervisor. The first is active listening. I truly believe that listening is the key to developing trust, the key to high performance, the key to having great employees. Here are two skills that I suggest you work on developing. One is get in the habit of having a short pause before you respond in a conversation. That shows that you're listening. It avoids the risk of interrupting, and probably most importantly, you actually hear what the other person is saying. You also can ask questions for clarification. I use tell me more to get people to really be clear so you can understand what they're saying. The second skill is positive feedback. Most of us have been trained to work with cows, to work with crops, to work with machinery. We don't need positive feedback there because they don't have the attributes of thinking, hearing, and feeling. Employees do. They respond very positively to positive feedback. Specific positive feedback builds confidence. It builds commitment to what they're trying to do. It builds commitment to the organization. Positive feedback is key.
Bob, positive feedback is a great tool, But what about those employees that don't do what they are told?
Great question, Karen. Unfortunately, that's always often the case. Okay. And one of the things that really is important here is we're going to introduce a third type of feedback called redirection. This diagram helps us explain that. Typically, we think of two kinds of feedback: positive feedback for good performance and negative feedback, typically viewed as a reprimand for unacceptable performance. I implore you to get rid of that simplistic idea forever, because it is incomplete. And the reason it's incomplete is that there are two possibilities when performance is not up to expectation. The first one, the red area on the screen, is that the employee, in fact, could have attained the performance but didn't work hard enough, wasn't focused, whatever the case may be. That could indeed call for a reprimand and negative feedback. But that leaves this green area. Performance was not up to snuff. Positive feedback's inappropriate, but it was out of the control of the employee. A negative feedback would be perceived as unfair. So we need a new type of feedback. We step in, we don't reprimand, we redirect the employee to successful performance. Executing our role as a supervisor and coach, we present whatever it takes to the employee. It may be additional coaching, additional training. We may have to change the goal, whatever it takes to enable the employee to succeed. And so these are our three supervisory skills: active listening, positive feedback, and redirection feedback.
Great! You can learn more about human resource management by viewing additional podcasts or reading Bob's articles at www.progressivedairy.com. Bob, thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to hearing from you again.
You're very welcome.